Getting young people today to get excited about preparedness is kind of like getting them excited about a root canal. It's just kind of tricky. And yet, there are some fantastic ways to get young people excited about preparedness, and I want to share some with you today. So to start out, the reality is like some young people are all about it. I mean, a lot of people still consider me pretty young. Most people are like, hey, you're a young dude. And it's just because maybe I mostly hang out with people that are older than me. I'm in my late 30s though, so I'm not that young. But I've always loved preparedness things. And I think part of it is because I grew up as a Boy Scout. I grew up in a family that did lots of preparedness stuff. And so it was kind of just like part of life. And so continuing to do those things today is just like enjoying my favorite aspects of childhood. But I have kids today who are in the world today, and a lot of times, what do they want to do? They want to play video games. They want to live in a virtual world. And a little bit of that is probably fine. But I want them to learn the skills of preparedness. So let's talk today about 9 preparedness skills that your kids will actually love learning. Skill number 1 is setting up a shelter. Now, this video comes from a recent camp out that I did with my son. It was spring break, and so my wife is like, he could really use an outdoor experience where he's pushed to the limits of what he thinks he's capable of, maybe beyond those, because I know he's capable of substantially more. So I took him out for a couple of days so that we could just try to do some different things and some kind of hard things as far as he's concerned. And we started out by setting up the tent, something that he's helped me do before. Now, setting up a tent isn't like a super preparedness skill, but it is a preparedness skill. If you need to like hit the road and get out of town quick and you're just grabbing your gear and going, being able to set up a tent, just knowing how to do that comfortably is gonna make a big difference. Now, we could take that a step further and work on building shelters, but this time of year, it's tricky for me to get into locations that have anything other than just rocks like the location that we had here. So we didn't do a lot of shelter building, although some of these rocks were super cool and had little cutouts that were kind of like little caves. Maybe we could have like huddled up inside of one of those. Anyway, that was skill number 1. And you know what? I've found so far that my kids, they love it when we just set up a tent. All the rest of my kids are like, when can we go camping? In the backyard. We're gonna do it because they have a blast and they get to practice setting up a tent and sleeping in slightly less than ideal conditions. Number 2, this is a legit preparedness skill, and it's building a fire. Now, with my son, whenever we go out, I usually like to try at least lighting the fire the first time, straight up with just a ferro rod, my knife, and ideally with kindling and tinder and stuff that we can find, rather than whatever we were able to bring with us. I know that he can light dryer lint pretty quickly. So this time, what did we do? We went looking around for some dried grass, and we spent probably half an hour striking that ferro rod until we got sparks to actually ignite some of this grass. It took a bit. A little bit embarrassed to say, it took me quite a bit too. But we got it lit, actually several times, just most of the time the grass wasn't totally dry, so it didn't take. But once we got it lit and once we got it going, we got a great fire going. And he's learned the basics of several different layouts for fire, several different structures, I should say. You know, you got your basic teepee or your lean-to, then you've got your log cabin style fires that are great for cooking. And he's learned the basics of that, and we're gonna keep doing more and more and more. All right, that leads to number 3, and number 3 is cooking. I'm gonna say that roasting over a fire kind of counts. Knowing how to, hold a food item above a flame or not even above a flame, but oftentimes down near the coals, and just learning, sort of how to distance it just right from the heat source so that it cooks well without burning the outside is a good skill. And it's easy to practice on something as simple as a marshmallow, where if you drop it in the fire, you're not gonna be super ticked off because your kid just ruined a steak. But as your kids get more experienced, I recommend trying some other foods and teaching them how to cook, not just cooking in the kitchen, but cooking over an open flame and cooking in those outdoor and, again, kind of alternative methods, so that if there's a situation where they don't have their normal kitchen setup, they can still cook a good meal. Next up is curiosity and an adventurous spirit. Now, is this a preparedness skill? Yeah, I believe it is. I believe that having the confidence to explore and the curiosity to want to explore and understand things is super valuable for preparedness. It's really, really closely related to the skill of paying attention to everything around you, having your head on a swivel. We call that situational awareness. And situational awareness is closely tied to curiosity and just wanting to observe and explore the world around you. Getting in the outdoors and getting in new places instills in kids that curiosity. They're going to want to see what's over those boulders, and they're going to want to see if they're able to climb on top of that huge boulder or up a tree or any number of other places. In fact, every time we go out into the woods, my kids are climbing on something. And I think that's an important skill that also ties into the next one, physical endurance and being able to trek over long distances. We don't need to be elite athletes to be prepared. I don't realistically think that that's a necessity for all of us, especially as we age. But we do need to have a level of fitness to where we could put on a backpack, a bug out bag, carry some gear with us, and walk for a great distance, several miles, we'll just say. And that's something that my son and I got to do. We went on this hike. We started kind of near this camping area, and we hiked around and walked across a bridge and up a trail and up a big hillside. And it had some tough, pretty steep parts. But getting to the top of a ridge line and being able to look out from a peak and see that a little dot like way over there, that's where we started. That, first of all, instilled in him just this like feeling of accomplishment, of having gone a great distance, farther than he's used to being able to go, and be able to see the whole way and see like, that's how far I came. It was super exciting, and it helped encourage him, helped him know that he's capable of a lot more than he thought he was. The cool thing is not only did we hike all that, we hiked it back, and then we hiked into a lake and did fishing and all sorts of other stuff. I think I counted at the end of the day, my Fitbit was told me that I had 30,000 steps because we'd just been going all day long. And he knows now that he can do that. He could just walk all day if he had to. Now, in the course of walking, we did face a bit of adversity. Not only, the physical endurance of hiking a great distance, maybe getting a little bit thirsty along the way, feeling a bit tired, but we had one of my least favorite pests chasing us for half of this, right? We hit this section just as we got past the bridge where the mosquitoes were just nuts. It's springtime. The crazy thing is right down by the river, they were leaving us alone. But as soon as we got up a little ways from the river, the mosquitoes were everywhere. And I thought, well, let's just hike up. We'll get up, as soon as we get up onto that ridgeline, I'll bet that they'll die down. The farther we get from the river, no, they just kept coming at us. And every time we thought, well, let's just get through this swarm, it never ended. And there were just millions and millions and millions of mosquitoes. And my son had a bit of a hard time with that. And he started to have this anxiety well up within him. And I could tell he was just getting incredibly frustrated. And I was able to help him. I was able to slow down and say, hey, are they hurting you? Well, no. Okay, you have very little exposed skin. We used a lot of bug repellent. He's like, yeah, but they're flying into my eyes, they're flying into my mouth. And I'm like, yes, but is it hurting you? No. It's just really, really, really annoying. And as we worked through that, yes, that hike was hard, and then we had to hike back through it to get back. But as the mosquitoes pestered us over the next day and a half from that point on, it wasn't nearly as big of an issue. We ran into other swarms of them in different places where we went, and it just was not nearly the same issue that it was because he had already sort of endured and persisted through that adversity. Learning the skill of being able to persist through adversity is vitally important for preparedness. If you are going to become overcome by anxiety, you are not going to be able to think rationally, and you're more likely to end up endangering yourself and others. Learn persistence by putting yourself in situations where you have to face adversity. I'm not saying go out there and create adverse situations for yourself, but when you do encounter adversity, don't just run away. Look for opportunities to work through it. All right, the next skill was off-road driving next to a river. We're gonna die. I'm just kidding. My son's 12, and I don't even think he could see out the windshield while reaching the pedals yet. So it was me doing all of the driving. But driving is an important one. I'm not gonna count it as one of the 9 for this video because it's not one that I shared with my kid. Although kids would love to learn that, most at least.
Time you learned how to drive.
No, the next one has to do with the adversity that we faced, evading predators. No, at some point, on our way back down the hill, the mosquitoes were just so bad, and we knew they weren't gonna let up until we got past them, and we knew about where they were gonna end. So we just sprinted along and had a little bit of fun with that. So we were able to work through that space a little bit more quickly and not have to face that adversity for quite as long. Realistically speaking, though, it is a great skill to learn, to be able to understand nature, understand the animals that you're going to encounter, understand people, whoever might be putting you in danger, and just know the best methods that you can use to evade that danger. And kids like that. You can role play that kind of stuff. We don't have to actually go out and get chased by bears and coyotes and stuff, which was something that was a little bit scary to my son. I mean, we're in our tent and we heard ruffling around right outside of our tent, even though there was nobody around. We heard coyotes a ton because there's tons of coyotes out there in the desert here in southern Idaho. But I just helped him understand that we weren't in any danger, that they were going to leave us alone, right? And so understanding the wildlife and understanding what the dangers really are, wherever you are in any situation, is a super valuable skill. The next one is catching fish. Now, on this trip, I taught my son how to catch a fish, but he didn't quite learn it. He mostly just fished. No, I'm not gonna blame him for that. I caught just the one fish in there, I think, that seemed to be interested in the bait that we had. For the most part, most of the fish were just super small, and I should have just brought worms. That's what everybody here in Idaho, in all these little lakes, uses. They mostly just use worms. Actually, what I really wish I'd brought was my fly rod, because I think these fish would have gone for flies like mad. But they didn't like any of the other stuff that I brought. So my son suffered a little bit as a result of that. But he got a ton of practice casting and reeling and learning good technique. Honestly, it's a really valuable skill to be able to catch your own food, to be able to produce food from nature. And so we're gonna keep working on that skill until he starts catching some good fish, because honestly, he had a blast with that. He wasn't even missing the video games because he was just having a great time casting that rod over and over and over again. The ninth skill that I think most kids would love to learn. In fact, I saw dozens of kids learning this while we were there, because the place where we went camping has a cool, it's like a little archaeological area where it's awesome. There's tons of old, hundreds to 1,000-year-old petroglyphs on the rocks that you can see that were beaten into the rocks. But they also have this area where they teach you how to throw spears, literally spear throwing. And so maybe not necessarily the most vital skill for us to know today, but alternative ways to be able to hunt if necessary, I think is worth knowing. And so using these basically just handmade spears that they had, most of them were aluminum, but some were made out of wood. Using an atlatl, we were able to throw spears at significantly faster speeds and with much more power than a human can throw them with their own hand. Atlatl is a cool thing. It uses leverage. Basically, it's a shorter stick that you hook the end of your spear on and you toss the spear, and it uses that leverage to be able to fling a spear super fast. We had a blast practicing with the atlatls, and honestly, that's something that realistically you could go make in nature. All you would really need is a pocket knife and some feathers so that you could put some fletchings on your spear. So there you have it, nine preparedness skills that kids will love to learn. I know mine certainly did. We're gonna continue to learn these as well as others. What are some other important preparedness skills that you think we should be trying to instill in kids? And maybe what are some ways that you can think of that would make them extra fun and extra engaging for them to learn? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to learn from you guys as well. So thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join us in our next video.